My name is Rick Tischaefer. I'm the president of the North Dakota Fur Hunters and Trappers Association. Today we're going to build a wooden cubby for a body gripping trap intended to catch raccoons. The particular trap that we're going to use today is actually a 7 by 7 inch trap, meaning that the window of the trap is 7 inches by 7 inches. Some folks refer to that trap as a 220 body gripping trap. We have certain regulations in North Dakota that, and certain requirements that dictate where we can place certain size traps. In the case of this 7-inch trap that we're going to be building a cubby for here in just a few minutes, the requirements exist on state wildlife management areas that trap be recessed in some sort of enclosure. All right, so what we're going to do is we'll take a look at the regulations. They do change year to year, so we want to make sure that we're accurate in what we're doing and the equipment that we're using is legal in those certain areas. So again, we're just paying particular attention today to state wildlife management areas owned by North Dakota Game and Fish Department. So the regulations say that this particular size trap, anything larger than 6 inches, and this one is actually measures 7 inches when it's set, so larger than 6 inches, has to be either recessed in a enclosure that has either a 10-inch recess or a 7-inch recess. If we're going to enclose this trap in a cubby that has a 7-inch recess, we have to make sure that that opening into that cubby is no greater than 50 inches, all right? If we recess that trap 10 inches within that enclosure, then we don't have to do anything with its opening. So the first cubby that we're going to make is going to be 7 inches. We're going to do the recess for 7 inches, all right? So what I've done is we've cut 3 pieces of 1 by 10, 24 inches long. The entire size of our enclosure is going to be 24 inches long, all right? So we've got 3 pieces of 1 by 10 pine that we're going to make that cubby out of. Now, a 3-sided cubby, basically it's a top and 2 sides. And the benefit of that is that the animal that's going to approach that enclosure or go into that enclosure, their feet are on the ground. It's a much more natural feeling for them. You certainly could build a 4-sided cubby, but you really don't need to. Again, having that animal with his feet on the ground like that, it's more natural for them. Feel a little bit more comfortable about going into that enclosure. So what we've got here, we'll set that trap aside. We're going to get our wood ready to assemble the cubby. Some things that you're going to need, obviously, some power tools. We're going to need a crown stapler, a staple gun, a jigsaw, a screw gun, a drill, things like that. If you're just a little bit about safety, you need to be comfortable and familiar with using this equipment so you don't cause any injury to yourself or anybody else. Wearing safety glasses, important when you're doing cutting wood or cutting anything actually, using these power tools. And if your equipment is heavy duty enough, it makes a lot of noise, maybe you want to consider wearing ear protection as well. So just you want to be safe, put this cubby together without injuring yourself or anybody else. We're going to take our 3 pieces of wood, a top and 2 sides, basically. So, okay, so for our first cubby, it'll be 2 sides and a top, and we're going to make a 7-inch recess on this particular cubby. In order for that trap and its springs to fit, if the requirements are that the trap be recessed 7 inches inside the cubby, we have to measure in 8. We've got to account for the size of the spring, and that's going to be inside that cubby. So we're going to measure 8 inches back on our 2 sides. Okay, and we're going to look for the center of the board. So we're at 9 1/4, so we're going to be roughly at 4 5/8. All right, so right about there and right about there. Okay. That'll be where we'll drill our hole. Most of these traps, the channel that's needed for the recess only needs to be about 3/4 of an inch. You don't want to make it too wide because then your trap is going to be loose and wobbly. All right, so if we just use a 3/4 inch channel, it'll be a nice friction fit for that trap to fit into those grooves, into that recess, and it'll still be stable and firm enough that it won't fall over or twist or turn as that animal approaches that, or actually goes into the cubby. All right, so we've made our marks. What I'll do is I'm going to take a 3/4 inch drill, make a hole. Take my second board, do the same thing. Okay, so that'll be the maximum depth of our recess. And what we'll do now is mark our channel. Okay, that's the channel that we'll be cutting out. Okay. Quickly trade tools and go to a handheld jigsaw. Okay. So we've created our two sides, and all we have to do is incorporate the top. What we'll do is we use an air nailer for this. You can use screws, but because you're on the edge of the pine board, you may want to pre-drill those holes where you use the screws. All right. So just a little bit of word of advice to that. Get our air nailer hooked up. So we've got a side, and in this particular case, because the cubby that we're making is custom made to the traps that we're using, it's very important to do that because not all traps measure the same in width and in height. So we've measured our trap. We know that we need a full 1x10 as a top, and then the 1x10s basically as the sides as well. So that works out pretty nice. So we're just going to go ahead and match corners up. Make sure it's flush. And go right down the side. Okay. Do the thing with the other side. Do the same thing. All right. Okay. So we've got our three-sided cubby. The next thing that we need to do is put in stiffeners. As you can see, the sides are a little bit flexible. So what we'll do is we'll measure halfway in between. We know the board's 24 inches, so we'll go 12 inches. Make a mark. Do the same thing on the other side. Make a mark. We've pre-cut some 1x4 material. Basically, these are cut at 9 1/4 inches, the same width as the boards that we're using. What we're going to do is place a stiffener in the center here, and I'm going to place a stiffener in the back here because we're going to close off the back of it with wire mesh. All right? So we're going to need 2 stiffeners for this particular cubby. All right? Oh, look. And the one at the rear of our cubby. Board has a little bow to it, so we're just and do the same thing on the other side. Okay. So we have our stiffeners in. Makes the box a little bit more rigid, and there's going to be some benefit to both of them. I explained earlier, the back one we're going to use to put our wire mesh on, and then that center one we'll actually put bait holders on there. Show you that in just a second here. So with our mesh on the back, you can use, oh, that one came over, missed a little bit too. Let me get this one there. Correct that real quick. Get that out of there. You can use 1x1. This particular mesh is 1/2x1/2 hardware cloth. You could use 1/4x1/4 if you wanted. You just need something to close off the back, and so that I think that most animals going into an enclosure, if they can see through it, they're much more at ease with working the cubby, actually going into it. You know, if this was a solid back to it, they may be a little bit cautious because they can't see into that darkness and just wonder what's in there. So if you give them an opportunity to see through, that again relaxes them a little bit. They'll be more likely to use that cubby. The other thing about this is that whatever bait that you have in the back of it, of course, the prevailing winds or the breeze will carry some of that scent out and might help you in attracting that animal to the cubby. So we're going to use a open net or basically wire mesh on the back of our cubby, and I'm going to get my crown stapler now to put that wire on. All right, we're just going to go around, make sure we're lined up well. Okay, just like that. So we've got this on the back. Close that off. Next thing that we're going to do is add our bait holder. Explained that earlier. So we'll take a couple of, now this is the center stiffener. We're going to take a couple of drywall screws, 3-inch drywall screws, and screw through here. And basically the threaded portion of this screw is going to be exposed. So if there's any chunk bait or maybe like a bird carcass or a pigeon carcass or whatever that you're going to use for as an attractor or for bait for your cubby, you just impale it on the screws. That way no rodents or smaller animals can come in there and remove that bait from the cubby. All right, so we just go ahead and threaded portion sticks up in the air like that, so you can just, like I said, impale your bait on there, and it'll stay put. All right. Okay. So now we basically got our cubby in which our body grip and trap can slide into it. But what we know about our regulations in this particular cubby is that, so we're using a trap that's larger than 6 inches. We're going to be setting it in a state wildlife management area. That's going to be our trapping area. All right, so that if we use a 7-inch recess, we know that we have to do something to this opening because the regulations require this to be 50 square inches only, no greater than 50 square inches. And right now, basically, if we took this measurement, it'd be right around 80 inches. All right, so we've got to reduce that. And what folks will do is they'll use a piece of wire, either 1x1 or 1x2. And what we'll do is we'll place this over the cubby, and I'll use poultry netting staples to staple to hold this wire in place. Essentially what I've just done with this piece of wire is I've reduced the opening down to 49 inches. All right, so we got to be 50 inches or less. All right, and what we do with our raccoons and our fishers and things like that, they don't have any problems scooting down and going underneath this particular piece of wire. The reason for the recess, the reason for the limited size in the openings is to prevent a dog from working the set and getting caught or killed by that trap. All right, so what we'll do, show you how to fashion that piece of wire on there. Again, using just poultry netting staples. Look just like this. So what we do is we take one and place it here. And one over on the other side. Acts like a hinge. Okay, it flips back and forth. And even though the wire is close to the channel and stuff like that, there'll be no interference caused by this wire and that body gripping trap firing. Okay? All right. So that's how we get to a reduced size opening. All right, 7-inch recess, no greater than 50 square inch opening. All right, and that would be the cubby. If we were not using this as that added protection and reducing the size of the opening, we would have to go back 10 inches. All right, so that cubby, if we left the size of the opening the same, all right, we'd have to measure back 11 inches, drill our hole, cut our slot 11 inches back so that trap set further back into the cubby. All right, then we could leave the opening just the way it is. All right, but we're only 7 inches, so we're going to reduce the size of the opening, and this is a quick and easy way of doing it. Works just fine. What you want to do with these natural wood cubbies is paint them so they last longer. They're out in the weather 24 hours a day kind of a thing, so in some pretty nasty weather in the fall and early winter, or in the spring if you use them in the spring. So you want to paint them, give them a good shot of some heavy duty paint. Don't expect to paint your cubby and then take it out 2 days later and use it. You want to make sure that you plan ahead a little bit, paint them up, give them time to dry properly and air out so that the petroleum based or the smell of the paint doesn't linger with any part of the cubby. So body grip and traps that are used in these types of cubbies, you can set a railroad tie plate on top. You can set a cinder block, a heavy piece of iron on top of it to keep the cubby in place and to anchor your traps to. If you want to use re-rod stakes, you're working when the ground is not quite frozen yet, you can drill a hole, take your 3/4 inch drill a hole through the top, and you can place your re-rod stakes straight down through the top to hold this in place, and of course wire or fasten your traps to that stake. So I hope this was informative to you. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks for watching, and good luck out on the trap line.